During our year-long investigation of the juvenile justice system in Georgia, one of the things we discovered is the connection between teens in trouble and trauma. Again and again, CBS 46 investigator Karen Greer saw how trauma in children can sometimes lead to a life of crime.
Douglas County Judge Peggy Walker loves the children she serves. In her nearly 20 years on the bench, she has seen just about everything. And whether it's teens, trauma, trouble, or crime, the children she sees are often affected by events that impact how they live.
We don't understand that trauma affects development. If you have not had your needs met as an infant and toddler, you do not develop language, and behavior becomes your language.
In juvenile court, Judge Walker not only oversees children who've committed crimes, but also domestic cases where care, support, and custody of minor children is an issue.
We see a lot of trauma come from what I call chronic neglect.
Experts tell us that trauma can take many forms.
It could be trauma that happens within the family. It could be trauma that happens outside of the family.
Like divorce, substance abuse, family violence, or even health challenges. But psychological and emotional issues are also a growing concern. Over the last 2 years, the juvenile justice system has seen an increase in the number of youth who have mental health diagnosis.
The estimates are between 30 and 60% of the youth that are detained in the country have some type of complex trauma. What we're seeing here in the facility, more youth that have mental health issues, more youth that have complex trauma issues, and youth that are more of a risk to commit another offense.
Is he your little brother?
Yes, ma'am.
Is he important to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me tell you something. He is watching everything that you do, good and bad, and when you make bad decisions, he learns that's how to get attention.
Judge Michelle Harrison also sits on the bench in Douglas County, and she tries to help parents assess what might be happening with their children.
We can hook you up with the right counselor to help you deal with your internal stuff.
This same sort of thing happens in courts all across the state.
The community expects us to keep an eye on you.
Judge Steve Teskey is the chief juvenile judge in Clayton County. He says it's important to understand and treat the problem before locking up the child.
See, the problem is that when you just punish a kid, you're actually punishing a symptom of which a lot of it is childhood trauma.
And this trauma, if not treated, can lead to juvenile offenders who become repeat offenders. The Atlanta Police Department has the data to back that up.
One snippet of data showed that we had 5 juveniles that have 101 arrests between them and were responsible for 128 crimes.
Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields says these crimes are the result of hopelessness in many teens.
They do not have home lives to speak of. Their lives lack structure, and they very often may be hungry, truly hungry for food. When you have nothing, then why would you not turn to crime?
And in Metro Atlanta, these crimes are often serious and violent.
So much more to discuss here. Joining Judge Peggy Walker is Dr. Kanika Bell, licensed psychologist and associate professor of psychology at Clark Atlanta University. Thanks so much for coming in for important discussion. It really is. You also work inside the Fulton County Juvenile Court. I want to know why you think it took so long to recognize the connection between trauma and trouble here before reform came.
I think for a while people were just shocked by the ability of someone so young to be able to commit quote-unquote an adult crime. So I think most people had to just get used to the idea of how in the world could this child be capable of these kinds of behaviors. But as a psychologist, we've seen, of course, these behaviors before. We'll see it in the parents, and then we'll kind of just see it transmit to the children. And I think it did take, I won't call it too long, because now we've arrived, we finally realize that we can't criminalize mental illness, and that we should work a little bit harder to recognize when that is what we're seeing in a child, that these behavioral expressions, even though criminal, are just that. They are a way of reaching out, they're a way of trying to get help, they are a way of expressing that they don't have other options.
One of the triggers to trauma, as we know, we were discussing, Judge Walker, is poverty. So many of these children are in the middle of just real poverty situations. You talked about understanding better through a poverty simulator. Explain what that was like.
Well, I've done several of them. One of them was with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, and we had the opportunity to step forward if we had, for example, the privilege of going to the library, if we lived in a single-family home, if we had two parents. But you had to take a step backwards if you didn't have a library card, if you weren't raised in a single-family home, if you didn't have two parents. And then at the end of the simulation, then we could see that some of us had had very wonderful lives and some of us had had very troubled lives. And that was just among the judges. So imagine what it's like in the general population. Other simulations are done through the County Extension Office, through our Family Connections Collaborative. And these decisions are like, you're given your money for the month and then you're given a set of complex problems. The money's not going to go far enough. So you have to make decisions. What's essential? What can you sort of wait and hope that nothing happens? And it really helps a lot to be compassionate, to be thoughtful in how you're dealing with people, instead of saying, why did you make such a bad decision?
Yeah. Because
you don't know what the other decisions were that led to that one.
All right, ladies, don't go anywhere. Don't you go anywhere. When we come back, we'll wrap up our discussion of teens' trauma when public affairs on Peach returns.